I know you make an effort to live a life of integrity and love, but there's something we frequently overlook. Everyone pursues the same goal, but our innate tendency is to think that best in others and clinging to the idea that humans are inherently good. The harsh reality is that some people have a darker path. If we're not cautious, people with bad intentions might infiltrate our lives and leave chaos in their wake. One of the most important lessons philosophy imparts is to stay alert in order to be ready for the problems life presents. Recognizing individuals who would harm us is difficult, since they frequently lurk in plain sight. You've probably encountered someone who, despite their amiable exterior, has without hesitation, they take advantage of others' flaws to harm those around them. Without giving it any attention, these behaviors can subtly infiltrate our lives. Before we can comprehend the harm being done today, we will discuss the unmistakable indications that the person you're interacting with has bad intentions, whether they're a stranger or your peace may be threatened by friends or even family members, and it's summary crucial to comprehend how to recognize and separate yourself from them. The Stoics understood that not everyone we encounter is motivated by virtue. Some are their worst tendencies, and we run the risk of being drawn into their negativity if we don't learn to identify them. Remember to stay to the very end, because the final group we discuss is the most hazardous. They are the ones they inflict the greatest harm and are frequently the most difficult to identify. Therefore, by the time you finish watching this video, you will have the knowledge necessary to safeguard your heart, mind, and life from harmful people's influence. But before we go into the first indication, if you're someone who values, please click the like button to help distribute this if you're wise and want to live life more clearly. Message to more people. Let's start with the fact that they enjoy other people. They enjoy the suffering of others. One of the most obvious and concerning indicators of an evil person is pain. It may seem shocking, but there are those who take pleasure in the suffering of others. Sincerely, like watching others suffer or struggle, albeit this isn't usually the case. Evidently, they don't go around publicly commemorating someone's. Unfortunately, this conduct is usually subtle. Perhaps they laugh too much at when someone else is having a horrible day, they appear strangely delighted or embarrassed. It's this subtle contentment. The Stoics feel that they learn something gloomy about their character from the mistakes or adversities of others. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that compassion and empathy are fundamental qualities. Since we are all a part of the same body, when one part of it suffers, we all suffer as well. If someone doesn't care about that pain or worsens the pleasures in it, it indicates they've utterly separated from our humanity. Empathy is the foundation of the capacity to interact with others and coexist peacefully in society. An insensitive individual who rejoices when others suffer is a direct danger to that balance in Stoic thought. This conduct runs entirely counter to Seneca emphasized that we should strive to serve others rather than take advantage of them, which runs counter to the virtue principles. Own weaknesses. Whereas a malevolent individual views weakness as a chance to feel better about oneself. They might even deliberately set up circumstances in which others find it difficult to observe the mayhem taking place. This isn't only a lack of empathy, it actively seeks out the misery of others. The issue about these people is that they frequently put on a front of normalcy. They may even act as though they care about your difficulties, but eventually they will stop making it clear that they like them. Their behavior exposes the reality, and you may observe that they never truly provide sincere assistance when you need it, or even worse, they quietly make things more difficult for you, just to observe from on the sidelines. This can depress you, undermine your self-esteem, and cause you to question. You are exactly what people desire, but the stark reality is that all they have. If you allow them to have power over you, we can't control what other people do, but we can control how we react. The more we concentrate on strengthening our inner fortitude and own moral compass, the less their distorted contentment can impact us. It's crucial to understand these people for who they are, keep your distance and defend your serenity. Keep in mind that their pleasure in your pain is a reflection of their own internal conflict rather than an indicator of your, even when you come into someone who appears to enjoy your suffering. Avoid being preoccupied with trying to alter them or directly address their actions, instead relying on the Stoic idea of you cannot alter apathy's emotional tranquility, but you can choose not to let they disturb your inner tranquility. Separate yourself, establish limits, and concentrate on the things you have control over, such as your emotions, reactions, and route to. The second aspect of personal progress is the ongoing need for an ongoing desire for control. The constant drive to control everything is another telltale indicator of someone with malicious intent. These individuals thrive on control, whether it be over other people or the course of events. Fear and insecurity are the root causes of this urge for supremacy, which shows up as an obsession with having. Although everything goes their way, they actually feel helpless and uncontrollable. Thus they try to control every aspect of their surroundings, even the people living there. Is not the same as someone who enjoys keeping things orderly or in order. This is far more pernicious, since they frequently turn their demand for control into manipulation. Stoicism teaches us to focus in the face of emotional dominance and coercion on the things we can control, such as our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. But here's the Epictetus famously stated that certain things are up, and we shouldn't try to control other people. One of the fundamental principles of Stoic philosophy is that when someone tries to dominate us, some things are not. The decisions, actions, or lives of others not only go against that core idea, but they're also creating situations that are poisonous and suffocating. The issue with these people is that they view others as inferior to themselves and lack autonomy. As instruments to mold their own world, consider the individual in your life who constantly demands to know where you should go, what you should do, or even what you should be thinking and believing. That a buddy might be controlling every conversation, rejecting your feelings or thoughts, or a colleague who demands that everything be done their way, regardless of the group determines that it might be a family member or partner who attempts to decide for yourself who you spend time with and how you conduct your life. Their demand for control extends beyond upholding law and order. It also involves holding you accountable and guaranteeing their authority over you, because these individuals think that if they can, control equates to security. Control every area of your life, they'll feel secure. Yet Stoicism serves as a reminder that when attempting to manipulate people, this is a harmful illusion, because they're genuinely. The Stoics were obvious in demonstrating their lack of self-control. Marcus Aurelius asserts that true strength originates from inner mastery rather than from controlling others, said that you are in control of your thoughts, not external circumstances. Recognize this, and you will. Those who try to exert control over everything outside of themselves have failed to see this. Completely, this domineering behavior may begin modestly at first, as it may appear that when someone is simply taking the initiative or leading by example, the demand for control grows with time and you begin to identify trends. They may attempt to control your time and identity, associate with them, or even how you believe they'll pass it off as beneficial or watching out for you. But in practice, it's more about keeping you in their influence. They can't bear the thought of you making choices on your own that don't suit their preferences. Being around someone who has to control everything all the time is the most harmful, since it erodes your sense of self. you may eventually begin to question your own choices, your discretion, and perhaps losing your self-assurance, which is just what they wish to rely on you and convince you that you will fail without their guidance. But the reality is, they show themselves to be more vulnerable the more they attempt to exert control. Keep in mind the Stoic principle of concentrating on your own needs when you find yourself in the sphere of influence of someone in charge. Acts and ideas, you alone are in charge of how you conduct your life. Nobody else has the authority to determine your decisions, and the instant you recognize that their authority begins to lose its influence, establish firm limits with these people, and if they continue to attempting to control your life, don't be scared to keep your peace. Of mind and your own development are far more important than continuing to be controlled by someone who is incapable of managing their own third lack of control. An odd sensation surrounding them is yet another potent clue that you're interacting with someone who's something off about them. If their goals aren't nice, you feel uncomfortable or weird around them, even when nothing appears to be clearly amiss. It's a faint, nearly undetectable indication, but one. There is something about their existence that our instincts frequently detect before our logical minds do. It simply bothers you. Perhaps your pulse skips a beat when they walk in, or you experience an unexplainable tension in the air. Even if the chat is brief, you may feel worn out after engaging with them. Appeared to be normal at first glance, but your body is attempting to tell you something. Detecting negativity or risk manipulation that hasn't yet been processed by your conscious mind fully registered. And what's intriguing about these exchanges is how delicate they. Sometimes, even when the individual isn't doing something obviously detrimental, they may be kind, smiling, and saying everything correctly. Yet something feels strange. Perhaps their body language doesn't match what they're saying, or their tone seems icy. Trying to hide behind kindness, the Stoics would advise us to have faith in these emotions in a society where deeds frequently convey more than just words. Our intuitions can lead us to realities we may not be aware of. Consider this: when you're at a family event, there may be a relative who doesn't. No matter how hard they try to fit in, it always makes you uneasy. When they're present, you feel stiff and nervous while everyone else is at ease. Or perhaps it's a co-worker that, for whatever reason you can't quite identify, leaves you feeling exhausted after every encounter. Every time you talk to them, you end up feeling uncomfortable, as if they've quietly undercut you, or manipulation puts a stamp on these events, even if they didn't say anything explicitly harsh or unfavorable, are not only in your brain. Our bodies and thoughts are highly skilled at observing tiny indicators, such as shifts in body language, tone, or energy, that we could not completely mindful of on a conscious level. The Stoics would contend that these feelings are a natural part of who we are. Defense's Marcus Aurelius spoke a lot about the importance of being vigilant, not only against outside dangers, but also against those whose motives are not morally righteous. When there is something about someone's personality or aura that makes you feel uncomfortable around them, line with what you know to be accurate and truthful. In fact, this type of discomfort can be a clear indication of the Stoic conviction that the self is one when someone's intentions are damaging or deceptive. They produce a dissonance in the surroundings that the project's external appearance is inconsistent with its internal circumstances, and we become aware of the discomfort that results from their inconsistency with their own behavior. Others perceive it as the Stoic notion that all things are interrelated, and when someone acts dishonestly, cruelly, or maliciously, it sends shockwaves through their surrounding emotional space. So it's crucial too frequently, we second-guess these thoughts and dismiss them as being overreacted or paranoid. Ourselves, particularly if there's no obvious cause for our uneasiness other than your inner guidance or intuition. Is there for a reason if you're feeling stressed, exhausted, or just off when you're near someone, it's worthwhile to investigate why. These people frequently use manipulation to gain access to your life. However, before you can consciously recognize it, your intuition is recognizing the emotional or psychological toll they're taking on you. The Stoics would tell us to be composed, yet vigilant. Don't allow when discomfort turns into worry or anxiety, don't ignore it either. If you constantly feel uncomfortable around someone, take a moment to consider the circumstance. Do they sap your vitality, or do their words or acts quietly affect you? May cause you to doubt your own feelings and ideas. These are the warning signs that your body has been warning you to keep your peace, but you don't have it. You owe it to yourself to pay attention to your inner voice if someone simply makes you feel bad. And take action to protect your health. Number 4, they decline accountability for their deeds. Another obvious indication of someone deny accountability for their deeds with malicious purpose is their unwillingness to accept accountability for their deeds. We all make errors, but how we respond to them is more important. The person we're discussing here never appears to admit when they've done anything that genuinely displays our character. Something incorrect, therefore they place the responsibility elsewhere, act like the victim, or come up with countless justifications. This kind of conduct fosters a poisonous atmosphere where nothing ever is resolved, leaving you to continuously wonder if you are the one responsible when, in fact, they are the ones who shun personal responsibility in Stoic philosophy. One of Stoicism's key tenets is that accountability is paramount. Realizing that although we have no control over our circumstances, we do have influence over how we react. Epictetus frequently reminds us that we are accountable for our words, deeds, and decisions. Taught his students that a person's ability to accept responsibility for their actions is the real test of their character. Refuses to do so if they consistently place responsibility or deny their errors, they are essentially not in accordance with this idea. Not just lying to other people, but also to themselves by avoiding the truth of their own behavior. We've all encountered somebody like this, perhaps a co-worker. When anything goes wrong on a project, someone who never owns up to their mistakes at work, they swiftly blame everyone else, even a friend, rather than owning up to their role in it. Who consistently encounters difficult circumstances in their relationships. Whether it's personal drama or financial difficulties, someone else is always at fault. Their careless behaviors or poor choices are never the cause. Rather, it's the terrible luck of the world or the people in it. According to the Stoics, this resistance to accept accountability is a lack of acceptance of reality, is a sign of weakness, because it is one of the causes of the reason this conduct is so harmful, is that it starts a dominance cycle when someone doesn't accept responsibility. They are experts at manipulating circumstances to make you feel as though you are at fault, making you feel bad for calling them out on something that wasn't your fault, or worse, forcing you to apologize for. Their actions and emotional manipulation can have a detrimental effect on your mental health. You may eventually begin to doubt your own judgment and wonder. Let's be clear, even if you are the issue, you're not someone who. When they continuously refuse to accept responsibility for their acts, they are merely transferring their own shortcomings onto you, and what's worse is that these people hardly ever change, and as long as they can shift blame to others, they will keep going in this direction. Why would they alter if they were never forced to confront repercussions of their behavior, and if no one holds them responsible, they have no reason to think, learn, or develop, since they're caught in a vicious circle of self-deception, and they pull people along with them in that loop, which is where Stoicism comes in. Direction. You have no control over their actions, but you do have some control over how much. When you notice this tendency in someone, You let it influence you. Setting limits is essential to prevent their resistance to accept responsibility. Draw you farther into their drama, the more you interact with them according to their terms. In order to avoid confronting the truth, they will manipulate the circumstance and instead take a hold your ground and take a step back. You don't have to solve their issues or take on the weight of their errors, which is their responsibility rather than yours. So, what can? When you come across someone like this, you first identify the behavior for what it is. Don't allow them to deceive you into believing that you are to blame for their issues. And then, keep your peace by establishing firm limits and letting them know that you won't be handling their feelings or correcting their errors. Keep in mind that you are accountable to yourself for your ideas, deeds, and you are in charge of your life, character, and you don't have to bear the burden of someone else's avoidance. Stoicism encourages us to live with integrity and bravery, which includes taking responsibility for our faults is a sign that someone is not. They're lying, and they're following your number 5 route. They lie all the time. One of the most blatant and damaging indicators of a bad person is a persistent habit of lying. These aren't merely the infrequent little white lies that people tell to spare the feelings of others. Rather, we are discussing lies that are frequent, needless, and frequently used. To someone who lies as readily as they breathe is someone who can deceive or dominate others. Someone who is unreliable will manipulate reality to fit their needs. Truth in order to obtain an advantage and damage the foundation of trust, that what is actually insidious about communities and interactions together. The subtlety of chronic liars' lies can be so subtle that they may begin with small talk, small partial truths to hide small errors, but the lies get worse with time. Soon they'll be making up whole tales to exaggerate their accomplishments or creating justifications to escape accountability. The more they lie, the they find it easy, and lying soon becomes second nature to them. Temperament. Someone with this kind of nature can even begin to accept their own lies, losing their grasp the difference between what is and is not genuine, yet the truth always comes. Their web of deceit eventually comes undone, but by then the harm has frequently already completed. One of the reasons lying is so damaging is because it causes a profound. When someone continuously lies, it makes everyone around the liar feel insecure. The truth, you begin to doubt yourself and find it tough to determine what is true, what they say, questioning whether or not what they've spoken to you is true. This uncertainty can be. The Stoics would urge us to avoid emotionally draining situations that make you feel like you're constantly treading on shaky ground. Avoid these circumstances not only because the lies are damaging, but also because they cause needless chaos in our lives, which is especially harmful. About a chronic liar is that they frequently don't appear to be the conventional villain. Instead, they may come across as amiable. They conceal their dishonesty by being charming or even weak, making you question your own judgment when you begin to suspect something is wrong. But lying is unquestionably a type of manipulation, and those who engage in it on a regular basis attempt to influence others by fabricating stories that service them, despite the effects such lies may have on those around them. Feel compelled to expose their lies in order to make them realize the truth. But habitual liars are frequently so engrossed in their own lies that they refuse to even accept the reality, when instead they'll probably double down and spin more because it's directly in front of them. Falsehoods to hide the truth, which is why it's crucial to be explicit bounds. You may choose how someone lives, but you can't make someone live an honest life. Considering how much influence they have over your life, you can decide to keep your distance from their dishonesty while protecting your own. The Stoics would also remind us that lying is inherently weak and that honesty and mental clarity are important. People that lie do so because they are afraid of the truth and the repercussions of being honest. According to reality host Seneca, a liar is always lavish of oaths. They fabricate their lies because they are unable to face the reality of their own behavior. Adverse situations, and as Stoicism teaches, embracing reality is the source of true strength. A person who lies lacks the strength to be brave and honest, and eventually their dishonesty will lead to their own demise. If you identify someone as a chronic liar, it is not your responsibility to correct them or to discover all of the lies they have told you. It is your duty to keep your integrity and truth and surround yourself with people who will help you stay calm, are dedicated to leading honest lives, since those are the ones who will support your development rather than drag you into although a web of deceptive lies may provide short-term control or manipulation. Ultimately, the Stoics were aware that they always break beneath the weight of truth. And it's number 6 is a lesson that we should all keep in mind in our own lives. They don't express regret. One of the most unsettling indicators that you are interacting with a malevolent someone is their total lack of regret. Transcends merely making errors. Everyone makes errors. What makes a person's character is demonstrated by their reaction when they acknowledge that they have harmed or wounded someone. A person who exhibits no remorse when their activities have a harmful impact on others is lacking in empathy, self-awareness, and moral compass. They don't feel bad about the harm they've caused, and rather than saying sorry or considering their activity, they frequently avoid or defend their acts by citing Stoic philosophy, which holds that regret is this inner voice that alerts us when we've veered off the path of virtue, is an essential component of self-improvement, and it gives us a chance to revise the course that Marcus Aurelius wrote, discussed in detail the significance of self-reflection and examining our thoughts. If someone can show me how our actions affect other people, he said, that my actions or thoughts are incorrect, I will gladly alter them, as I am looking for the truth. If no one has ever suffered actual injury, regret is an indication that we acknowledge our flaws and are eager to improve. But someone who feels remorse is uninterested in developing oneself or becoming more morally upright. Rather, they are mired in a manner of thinking that constantly justifies what they do. Regardless of the damage they inflict, the Stoics held that empathy and comprehension are fundamental qualities, and Seneca frequently discussed the significance of taking into account other people's viewpoints and being aware of how our activities affect the individuals in our immediate vicinity. Those who exhibit no remorse are wholly unrelated to these ideals, lack the compassion necessary to understand that their acts have actual repercussions for other people, rather than in light of their actions. They might even attempt to manipulate the circumstances so that you appear to be the issue. This is where their absence of regret makes them especially hazardous, since they will cause you to question your own emotions and perceptions that leave you unsure of who is truly at fault. What's even more concerning is that those who lack regret are frequently skilled manipulators who will take advantage of this lack of using empathy to their benefit. They manipulate circumstances to appear as though they're the victim. Even in cases where their actions are obviously harmful, you may find yourself in a circumstance in which they reverse the course of events and make you feel bad for even bringing up the matter. This strategy, which is sometimes called gaslighting, is a means of avoiding. They do this to escape any sense of obligation and duty, shame or regret, since they believe they have done nothing wrong. One of the emotional toll that dealing with someone like this can have on you over time is one of the most damaging components of it. Find yourself being cautious around them out of fear that they won't face their actions. Feel horrible about it because their lack of regret has taught you to expect. Your confidence may be damaged if they receive nothing in return, no apology, and no recognition of the suffering they have caused. and give you the impression that your emotions are unimportant, but the Stoics would remind us that our emotions, and although we have no control over other people's behavior, we do have power over our own experiences. When someone exhibits no remorse, how do we react to that behavior? The best course of action is to put as much distance between you and the other person as possible. The Stoics teach us to maintain composure and stability in the midst of conflict, and to set limits and safeguard our own mental health. Adversity, which includes identifying when someone's actions are detrimental and taking action to safeguard. You can't alter someone who doesn't feel bad about what they did, but one of the most crucial truths is that you have control over how big of an impact they have on your life. From Stoicism is that vulnerability is the source of true strength, and accountability requires the guts to acknowledge our mistakes, feel regret, and to people who don't want to make amends are weak. They're hiding from their own shortcomings, too scared to confront the repercussions of their acts, and their lack of regret may give the impression that invulnerable, but in truth they are seriously defective people who cannot develop personally. The more they deviate from the path of truth, the more they refuse to accept responsibility for their errors. The seventh virtue, harshness, is a component of they are inherently cruel. When you come across someone who is naturally vicious, it's simple. These are the kinds of folks who appear to enjoy creating confusion. Imagine a coworker who seizes every chance to make someone feel tiny or unimportant, making disparaging comments about their skills or pointing out their errors in front of others in the most visible degrading manner conceivable, or consider a friend who continuously makes fun of, not in a light-hearted or taunting manner, but with the obvious, these aren't just rough folks with the purpose to make you feel inferior. These are those who intentionally try to cause harsh harm to others along the edges. People are frequently adept at concealing their true motivations under a humorous facade. They will use humor or even helpfulness to cover up their insults. Such criticisms as merely being truthful, but in actuality their honesty is. Another well-known Stoic philosopher, weaponized Seneca, cautioned against this. He stated that we should not grow indifferent to the suffering of others, and rather make a concerted effort to be harshness, on the other hand, demonstrates a lack of service to those around us. Empathy and a refusal to accept the Stoic principle of assisting others in developing the problem. The problem with cruelty is that it frequently goes unchecked at first. These people can be endearing and captivating at first, which makes it much more startling when their actual nature begins to show themselves initially. Their harsh remarks or deeds may be disregarded as someone simply having a rough day or being a bit too direct. But eventually, it becomes evident that they like the power they get from hurting other people. Whether it's physical cruelty, like intimidating someone, or mental cruelty, like disparaging someone's accomplishments. Using violence, the objective is always the same: to establish control and make people feel. Once they realize it, helpless, vicious people don't stop at just one victim. Their brutality has an impact, and they frequently escalate their actions. Epictetus advised us to be on the lookout for those who live lifestyles that are not in line with virtue because of when we're with someone, influence can swiftly divert us off our own course, whose default state is one of cruelty, making it more difficult to preserve our own sense of their toxic energy, can infiltrate our life and cause us to lose inner serenity and harmony. If we're not attentive, one of the reasons cruelty is so harmful is that it's frequently covered up. People that are nasty like to present themselves as tough or strong but genuine. The Stoics believed that wisdom, self-control, and compassion were the sources of strength. Lifting others up, not tearing them down, is what true strength is all about. May appear strong at the time because they are the ones causing the harm, yet their brutality truly exposes their frailty. They harm people because they are so scared or insecure that they need to witness other people's suffering in order to make sense. Lack of authority or control over their own lives, which is why it's crucial to acknowledge cruelty as it is and react with the Stoic attitude of emotional detachment or apatheia, does not imply that you overlook cruelty or act as though it doesn't exist, and instead that you're not going to let it to dictate your mental state when you come across a Stoic person who is nasty by nature, would suggest that you establish clear limits, avoid their cruelty, and don't allow it to influence how you, as Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself, you have control over. Recognize this, and you will discover that your thoughts, not external circumstances, strength. It can be tempting to go straight up to someone who is unkind in order to question their behavior or make them aware of the harm they're doing. But the reality is that cruel people hardly ever alter their identity is frequently so embedded in cruelty that they don't even consider it an issue. In fact, they might even take your confrontation as a challenge and intensify their actions, as Stoicism instructs us to accept the things we cannot alter, and in many situations, what you can do if someone has a cruel heart is to regulate your response and distancing yourself from their influence. Also, keep in mind that cruelty, if we're not careful, spending too much time around it can spread. We may grow more cynical if harsh people begin to influence our own actions. More protective might even begin to take on some of their bad characteristics as a means of, in order to safeguard oneself. The Stoics stressed the significance of associating oneself with morally upright people. Seneca wrote, "Welcome those who will help you become a better man." In other words, be aware of the people you can help. Then you keep. Because the people in your life have a big influence on you. Character traits relatives and friends caution you about your friends and family, warn you. We frequently have an emotional bond with the individual in question, whether it's the emotional bonds with a romantic partner, a new friend, or even a co-worker, can cloud our judgment, causing us to minimize the harm being done or defend given the gravity of their actions. It's human nature to want to think the best of others, particularly if we have a stake in. Nonetheless, the Stoics stressed that reason must always prevail in relationships. Epictetus frequently stressed the importance of seeing things as they are, rather than how we would like them to be. If several individuals in your life are warning you about someone's character, it's time to stand back and consider the circumstances impartially. Consider a moment when your family or friends alerted you about someone, and perhaps you initially dismissed their warning, may have convinced yourself that they are being overly cautious or that they don't know the individual as well as you do. But with time, their worries begin to make more sense as you become aware of the minute adjustments that, when someone acts inconsistently or treats others as though no one is looking, these are frequently. The Stoics would tell us that we must always be mindful of the actions that your loved ones were trying to warn you about, receptive to the truth, even when it causes discomfort, as it occasionally. One reason we could disregard these warnings from those who care about us the most is that it's difficult to admit when we've erred in judgment, because we don't like to admit when we've been duped, that the person we trusted might not have been deserving of our trust. But the Stoics teach that it's okay to be Marcus or IUS. You are only incorrect in not fixing the course after realizing it. Wrote that if someone could point out my error, I would be happy to correct it because it is accurate. I look for the truth and have never hurt anyone by disregarding friends' worries. And family, due to pride or emotional ties, can bring even more suffering. Later on, those closest to you may observe actions that you've accepted as typical. Perhaps the individual is domineering, yet you've come to believe that they care too much. Perhaps they subtly disparage your self-worth, but you've persuaded yourself that they're only kidding. Your friends and family can provide a voice of reason during times like these, but you're being overly sensitive, reminding you that Stoics believe that healthy relationships are free of hidden intentions and conditions. Mutual respect, kindness, and honesty are the foundations of genuine friendship and love. When, despite our best efforts to persuade, the connection is essentially faulty since those components are absent. Ourselves. If not, the value is another crucial Stoic principle that applies here. Sometimes we lose our ability to see things clearly when we are too near to a situation. We become emotionally enmeshed, and our eyesight becomes blurred in order to perceive it clearly. Our desires, anxieties and hopes, friends and family, but aren't caught up in the. Similarly, as Seneca shrewdly pointed out, they can provide a new objective perspective that we can't obtain on our own. If you want to catch the appropriate wind to get you to the harbor, you need to know which one you're going to. If the people who are alerting you that there are rocks in the harbor you're going to, so it might be worthwhile to change your sails. Sometimes we may also ignore our worries before you are harmed, loved ones, because we believe that we are unique and that we can manage this individual in some way, that we will avoid making the same mistakes that others have made. Perhaps the individual in question has a poor reputation, but you tell yourself that our relationship is different or that they won't treat me that way. But the fact is that character traits are difficult to alter. If someone has a history of cruelty, lying or manipulation, it's likely just a question of period of time before they also reveal their actual selves to you, which is where the Stoic prudence is the ability to act with knowledge and foresight, as opposed to, the main lesson here is to enter a situation with blind faith and hope for the best. Know it's time to take action when several people who care about you are displaying warning signs. Take a moment to listen to the Stoics stress the value of surrounding yourself with intelligent, moral individuals who could guide you in making better decisions in life. Marcus. In order to remind himself to remain humble and receptive to guidance, Aurelius even kept a journal, and prepared to go off course if needed, if you end up defending someone's destructive behavior against the worries of your loved ones. It's important to consider why you're waiting. Are you letting your feelings blindly tether you to reality at the end of the day in relation to something that isn't helping you? Your family and friends only want what's best for you. Their cautions aren't motivated by jealousy, control, or negative. They originate from a loving and caring place, and the Stoics teach us to pay attention to sage advice and know when we're too near a scenario too. You can detect whether someone in your life isn't treating you well or has harmed you by looking at it closely. Plans, it's time to stop and reflect. You deserve to be in relationships that they exhibit disrespect, despite being grounded on the virtues of honesty and respect. Number 9. They exhibit disdain. One of the most obvious indicators when you're interacting with someone who doesn't have your best interests in mind when they treat others with disdain. Contempt is deeply rooted and goes beyond simple criticism or disagreement. Scorn for another person's value. When someone displays contempt, they are expressing that they believe that other people are beneath them as somehow unworthy of respect, kindness, or even basic human. However, this mindset has the potential to be extremely harmful, not only to those on the receiving end, but to anybody who has to witness or be around that kind of toxic energy. Persons that show disdain frequently do so quietly at first, which could be a sneering when someone else is speaking or making a demeaning remark someone's thoughts, aspirations or achievements. But as time goes on, the pattern becomes more obvious. They may dispute with others because they sincerely think that they are better than others. They belittle others, disregard their emotions, or continuously berate someone for their choices in appearance or lifestyle. The thing about contempt that is very pernicious is that it might be conveyed subtly with a disapproving look or loudly and overtly. If you've ever had a boss, the tone may be arrogant or a casual remark masquerading as a joke. If a friend or spouse consistently made you feel inferior or unworthy, you've probably personally witnessed the negative consequences of disdain. These are the folks who don't. No matter how much you achieve or how hard you strive, you'll always find a way to condemn or minimize your efforts. They're not merely providing helpful criticism or direction, they're actively searching for methods to make you feel less than. This might have a detrimental effect on your mental health and sense of self. The Stoics would counsel us to be extremely cautious of anyone who attempts to deprive us of our dignity in this manner. Contempt is particularly harmful since it frequently poses as those who exhibit contempt for others typically believe they are smarter, more successful, or more collectively than those they despise, but this is a phony sense of superiority. Shield they employ to safeguard their own brittle sense of identity, which is another facet of relationships are harmed by contempt, whether they are friendships or love partnerships. Connection or even a hostile work environment undermines the fundamental basis of respect that is necessary for any positive relationship to endure. When someone treats others with disdain, they foster a poisonous atmosphere where trust and understanding mutually cannot exist, and you cannot truly connect with someone who continuously devalues or disparages you. In one of the most pernicious ways that disrespect appears in intimate relationships, when a spouse or family member consistently uses scorn as a weapon, when they point out your shortcomings or make fun of your dreams. It's a conscious effort to undermine rather than merely offering criticism or harsh love. Your sense of self-worth over time, which may cause you to feel unworthy and powerless, leading you to doubt. Epictetus would remind us that we have no control over how other people perceive us. But we have the ability to limit the amount of influence we grant them over our inner states. If it's critical to identify when someone in your life is treating you with disrespect, it as a reflection of their own failings rather than your value. Keep in mind that how people treat you reveals more about them than it does about you. Keep your peace and be tough. Boundaries, and always decide to follow the moral road regardless of who crosses them. Your life is too brief to be burdened with negativity or brutality of others. You deserve to be in relationships based on integrity, kindness, and respect. Strong, remain loyal, and keep in mind Marcus Aurelius' statement that the happiness of your thoughts determine the quality of your life. Thank you for participating. If this video was useful to you, Stoic Journal, there is more wisdom to come. Simply select on one of the recommended videos that appears on your computer, and let's continue our journey to united in pursuit of a life of clarity, tranquility, and purpose. Till the next time, stay healthy and maintain your moral compass.